We do have two larger items, as probably most of you know, on the agenda tonight, both scheduled for a public hearing. We will be adhering to the public commentary at the beginning of the minutes. However, if you are here to speak during the public hearing for either of those applications, it's not really necessary to take up the time of the public comment section when we're going to have public hearing on those things afterwards, which everybody will be given a chance to state their opinions, thoughts, and information to the board. During those public hearings, I would like to remind everybody that that is a time to address the board and state your concerns. It's not a time to debate with each other or have back and forth conversations with other people in the crowd. It's just a time for you to state your commentary so that it goes on to the record of that public hearing. I'm not going to be tolerating any kind of bad behavior or accusations between people this evening. We have a lot on our agenda this evening, and I want to make sure that things move through in a timely and orderly fashion without things getting too out of hand. That being said, we do want to hear from everybody and hear your opinions, so please, if you have any commentary relating to the items that are on the public hearing this evening, feel free to make your statements, but you will have to state your name and step up and speak about what you are regarding your comments to. That being said,
2 seconds.
2 seconds. Time's up. 2022 meeting of the Hurley Zoning Board of Appeals. I move that we open the meeting. Seconded by Deborah. All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. All in favor, none opposed. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And I played golf today. So I just wanted to bring out some points, okay? And the first point is pertains to Cedar Development, okay? Cedar Development, when the planning board moved forward with Cedar Development, the attorney made a comment and specifically said, we cannot build until we get the Speedies permit, okay? Bottom line. The applicant does not own the property. They cannot get a building permit. I don't know if anybody here lets anybody build on their property if they don't own it, but you can't get a building permit unless you own the property, right? Unless the owner signs the application, right? So it can't be done. But more importantly, the Speedies permit has to be approved by DEC, and it has to be incorporated into the site plan. So the site plan are multiple pages. Could be 20 pages, 40 pages, but there has to be the Speedies permit, and the plan for the Speedies has to be included in that site plan, which then gets forwarded to the secretary to match the consultant's plan, and it has to all jive, okay? And then after everything jives, then the planning board members sign off on the site plan, and then the building permit would sign, the building inspector would sign the building permit, because he has verified that all of the required items are completed prior to his issuing the building permit. So that is what is pending on Cedar Development. I just wanted to bring that out because I owe it to the town, all right? Arizona, they were issued a special use permit, and part of that special use permit was a requirement for the laundry list of items that DEC supplied to them, they had to complete these items before they could continue further. And those items, under the best of my knowledge, were not completed, okay? So before they can go and do anything else for a special use permit that's expired, because the code says if you don't do anything within a year, your special use permit expires, okay? So that lapsed and they want to get a new special use permit. Well, as the prior planning board chairman, I am just making a recommendation that the laundry list of items from DEC be part of the application. So if they don't have those laundry list of items completed, the application is not complete. Simple as that, right? Because you're not going to hand your teacher a 10-question exam that's only got 8 questions answered, because then the test is not complete. Simple as that. You get an F or incomplete on the test. So the special use permit is a major issue with Arizona, and they have a lapsed special use permit. So I just want you to be aware of what is happening in the past today, because I owe it to the town, and you know, I want to thank you for your time that I can speak today. I can't make public hearings, so I wanted to speak. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. And
thank you very much, Mitch. We gave you a little bit of extra time there because of your previous service to the town.
Just to be clear, he wants his comments to be part of the public hearing record. He needs to submit them.
Well,
Victoria is asking
How do you got questions now?
to make sure that you want those comments actually entered into the public hearing record.
yes,
well, if you could put them into writing and then also resubmit that to the secretary.
right now?
No.
Not right this second. No, not right this second.
Yes, I will do
Yes.
that. I will send that to
Okay.
her.
Okay.
Is there anybody else in the room this evening that wishes to speak on the public comment section period of this meeting? Well, I think I reiterated that
Yeah.
if everybody wants to speak on any items on the agenda. Everybody's clear that, we will be having a public hearing on those 2 larger issues this evening, but this is open to everybody on everything that is on the agenda this evening. I'll just give everybody a moment more. Because we're still, it's 7:25. Before us this evening is the appeal of CO's denial of a building permit to renovate the Hurley house. The applicant is Arizona Hudson Valley, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. The applicant, well, I don't know that we even have to delve into this because we're already dealing with a public hearing on this matter this evening. So everybody should be aware that the CEO denied the building permits due to the fact that their February 8th, 2021 SUP has not been exercised within 1 year. I'm going to give a chance for the gentleman here. Can you just state your name for the record?
Sure, Umar Sheikh for the applicant, and I have with me here our project engineer, Pat Rippo.
Excellent. So now is your chance to present your application for us. Obviously, we're dealing with you on another issue this year, so whatever you feel pertinent, please present to the board regarding this.
So
Feel free. You have the
I
floor.
do appreciate the board's time, and I will try to keep it brief because we are here on a related topic for a public hearing. So our appeal here deals with the denial by the CEO of the building permit for the location. The building permit specifically relates to renovations to an existing restaurant facility that's on the property. Now, the basis for the denial of the building permit as I understand it, was the CEO's revocation of the special use permit that was granted to Arizona. And as the board is aware, we are already appealing the revocation of that special use permit. To reiterate our argument very briefly on why we are appealing that revocation is that it's our understanding that the CEO has taken the position that either the special use permit or the town law required that the process for our special use permit be completed within 1 year, and that the project be up and running within 1 year. But neither the resolution provides for a completion date of 1 year, and that's simply impractical given the items that we were required to complete in order to apply for use of the project the way the special use permit described. The town law, in fact, does not use the word completed, right? The town law under which I understand the CEO is acting stated that if the special use permit has not been exercised within 1 year, then that special use permit is subject to revocation. So as we talked about last time, the question really relates to what is the definition of the word exercise. Now, the town law does not provide a definition for the word exercise, but the town law then provides that if the term is not defined, we go and use the regular definition of that term, right? So the Merriam-Webster dictionary provides the following definitions for the word exercise. 1, to implement the terms of, such as exercising an option. 2, to make effective an action, such as exercising good judgment. 3, to put into action, practice, or use, right, such as to exercise freedom of speech. Or 4, to use or display in one's action or procedure to exercise judgment. So it's been our position that Arizona has indeed exercised its special use permit given all of the various activities that Arizona has undertaken in order to move forward with the project, in order to implement the terms of the special use permit. And the last time that we were here, the board asked for a detailed timeline of exactly what Arizona has done, and that we submitted and received by the board on August 25th. And that includes a very detailed 11-page timeline of all the actions that Arizona has taken in exercising its special use permit, going all the way back to August 31st of 2018. So I note that the board has that, and I would ask that because these issues are related, that the board consider the written materials that we've submitted on the other appeal to also be considered as part of the record on this appeal. So our first basis for the appeal of the denial of the building permit is, in fact, the improper revocation of the special use permit, but we have a second ground, right? And I'll let Mr. Ripa address that.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the zoning board. I apologize. My name is Pat Ripa, manager of engineering and construction for Arizona. Sorry. So I just want to furthermore what Umar had to say, stating that the special use permit has no jurisdiction on the application for renovation of this project. This project is an existing use, it's an existing facility. There was no change to the occupancy, no change to the use. That project therefore should be approved, or at least given the opportunity to have a list of conditions that need to be met to require approval of that building permit. That's all.
Thank you.
Just to add to what Mr. Ripa was saying about existing use, I'm now directing the board's attention to the planning board's special use permit resolution that was granted to Arizona February 8, 2021, where the resolution talks about the lodge for which we've applied for a building permit. And the resolution states, Twin Lakes is an existing resort and wedding venue. Project does not propose an increase in the maximum capacity of the restaurant at the venue, which is the building we're talking about, and proposes to continue the existing use with the expansion of the cabin development. So no permit was applied for with respect to the cabin development, as we haven't met all the conditions for the special use permit. But the resolution even indicates that with respect to the restaurant, there's no change in use that is even being proposed. So I thank the board for its time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
No questions from me.
Well, my only question for you is, because we're dealing with this as an open application and we're going to be having a public hearing on this evening, is there anything that would be perhaps, lack of a better term, FUBAR, for us to accept this application because we haven't made a decision on the previous application? I'm not saying that we deny it by any means, but can we just move right into accepting this one?
I think you can accept it, but it wouldn't make sense to decide this one until the first one is decided.
Certainly.
So you can process it, schedule a hearing, with the understanding that the hearing is going to be continued until such time as the first one
Okay.
is decided. Because it is dependent
Yes,
in
certainly.
part on that decision.
Makes sense to me.
I also have a resolution for classified as type 2. You want to give that to me?
Yep. Well, that being said, does anybody have any questions for our counsel on this specific matter? Len, are you a maybe, or are you just checking things out? No questions? Okay.
So I guess I do have a question for the applicant. So your argument is that the restaurant use could operate today independent of the special use permit for the entire project?
Yes.
With that being said, I would like to make a motion that we classify this as a type 2 seeker action, schedule for a public hearing at the next October 13th. Remembering that date correctly? October 13th, zoning board of appeals meeting. Seconded by Andy. All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands? Am I forgetting?
Exactly, Larry, second.
Oh, Len. Len second. You're overlooking. I thought I saw Andy's hand.
Rick, Leonard. Oh, no.
Was Andy? Yep. Seconded by Andy, all in favor, none opposed. To reiterate what I've told everybody else, applicants, $50 check for the processing of the public hearing, and all the adjoining property owners will receive a letter. You're welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And we'll see you shortly. Okay. I believe that finishes our applications for the evening. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. We will be resuming the meeting now. If you can please return to your seats and prepare. So our second public hearing of the evening is the appeal of the CEO's determination that the Planning Board's special use permit approval for Arizona has expired on February 8th, 2021, and must start over before any building permits are granted. I do want to let you know this evening that due to high volume of folks looking to speak, we will be implementing a 3-minute comment time for each individual looking to speak. Please keep your comments concise and to the point. If you are merely agreeing with somebody that has made a statement previous to you, you don't need to reiterate that. You can just say, I agree with what the individual has stated, and move on. Based on how long it takes to move through the comment period, we may have time to address additional comments as long as it's new information and not a reiteration of what has been stated previously. We will be keeping the public hearing open on both these matters so that the board has time to review what has been presented to it and also give time for additional information to be submitted before the next month's meeting. Just a moment, Linda. So with that being said, Linda?
My question is, does that 3 minutes include if you have 2 questions to ask them or the board? Does that include that? My 3 minutes would be?
Well, thank you for that question. This is a time for the public to make statements of their concerns to the board. However, it is not a time to have a back and forth banter between individuals in the crowd. We're not going to be really taking questions at this time. I am going to move the applicants or the people representing the applicants towards the end of the comment time so that they can hear all the public commentary and then have a chance to make a statement to those concerns. But I do have to reiterate, this is a time just to express your concerns and make a public comment to the board. It's not going to be a kind of back and forth commentary. And yes, you could state a question, but we're just fielding everything this evening initially. But please refrain from, if somebody makes a comment and you don't like their comment, don't step up to the podium and address that person in, rhetoric. That will not be accepted. So, without, I'm being told no clapping, or whooping, or whistling. Please. Makes the microphones go crazy. Yep, and so I'm going to just to reiterate the 3-minute time frame. We're trying out something new just for these bigger public hearings. We have some little paddles. So she's going to be timing the 3-minute time frame. Obviously, you're not going to get shut down right at 3 minutes on the mark, but the yellow means that your time is coming up.
You have 30 seconds left.
And the red is, yep.
So just so people can hear me, with 30 seconds to go, you'll get the yellow card. So that's start wrapping it up, finish your thought, because 30 seconds later you'll get a red card, and then we're going to be moving to the next person.
This is like soccer.
Yeah. Or like Toastmasters.
Well, why don't we start once I open the public hearing?
Right.
So, at this point, I move that we open the public hearing on the Arizona appeal. Seconded by Kara. All in favor? Verbal aye or show of hands. All in favor? None opposed. So we're going to be reading down the list of folks as they signed in for this specific application or appeal. And if somebody feels the need to speak after we run through the people who have signed in, you'll certainly have time. And then I'm going to turn the floor over to the folks representing the applicant. I'll field a question very quickly. Mr. Glass.
And please don't start the meter. Just a quick question for clarity. The public hearing tonight is not about 55 units that has already been approved. The public hearing tonight, as I understand it, is strictly they didn't comply with the 1 year, or did they? Is that correct?
Correct. As I stated at the beginning, the issue before us is that their 1 year time frame has run out without anything being exercised.
Can I ask you a question as well? What do you mean by start over then? So if the period for the permit has expired?
And
it's
essentially, if
subject
we keep with the CEO's determination, they would have to return to the planning board to restart getting a new special permit altogether.
So is that the point we're at, that we're starting over and they have to restart the whole project?
We're not there yet. We're making that determination this evening. Or, well, we're not making that we're here to hear the concerns this evening. So at this point, I'm going to start reading down the names and letting people make their commentary. First one we have, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to have to come up to the podium, state your name, address. We want the address
Yeah,
as well.
it's on there, yeah.
Name, address. So we have it for some folks. Mitch has already talked.
Yep, and one other thing, if you decide all of a sudden you want to talk, there's a new sheet to come sign up. You can walk behind the board. So there's another sheet over here if all of a sudden you didn't sign up and you're like, you know, I think I really want to speak. There's another sheet for both of them. So,
However, the public hearing has began, and now I'd like to call Pat Ripa. Oh, okay. So as I said, we're gonna let you speak at the end after you've heard everybody's concern. Winnie and Chuck Skolutsky. I apologize for my pronunciation.
I was born with it.
I was born with it.
And you use the microphone.
Sure. I'm Winnie Sokolowski. We live at 390 Joyce Lane. We've lived there for 17 years. So we do have some concerns about the project. We have a concern about the infrastructure. We currently have an issue with traffic on Joyce Lane and Zantuck. Joyce Lane more in particular because it's a straight run. People avoid using Zantuck because it's has more curves. So they go on Joyce Lane and they go at excessive rates of speed. By putting this unit in, it's going to increase the traffic on Joyce Lane and adversely affect the character of our neighborhood without a doubt. We have a very quiet street, we have a very quiet neighborhood that's already impeded by the traffic, but with these increased units and people coming and going, it's severely going to impact our neighborhood. We have a concern about the increased crime associated with construction sites. To date, they have not met the conditions that are required by the permit, and by extending the permit, giving them more time, the property is already going downhill, and there's already been an increase in crime on the property. We have a concern with more construction equipment and additional buildings being brought there, that it's going to invite more crime to the neighborhood as well as to the property in general. Because of the lack of upkeep of the property to date in the past year and the failure to meet the demands of the permit, we have concerns about the ongoing maintenance of the property. So if they haven't been able to keep the property as they should have to date, what assurances do we have going forward that they're going to maintain the property going forward? We have not, so that's a great concern to us. So this, noting that the changes it's going to make to our neighborhood and the problems we already have with speed and these additional concerns, we would like to just level concerns about the whole project in general. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You didn't even get the flag or anything.
That's all.
Second, I have Umar Sheikh, but I believe that you are yes, you're representing. Okay, so we'll put you at the backside. Neil Lynch.
My name is Neil Lynch. I'm at 347 Joyce Lane. Compounding her, or building on her points, the road structure of Hurley Avenue, of Zantuck, and of Lucas, as well as Joyce Lane, I don't think it's going to be able to tolerate the additional traffic that this is going to generate. To get to that property is not an easy way to, there's no easy way to do it from 209. And I also think it's going to fundamentally change the character of Hurley, of our town. Having a lot of people going to, the 50 or so houses or whatever they're gonna build there, especially as a hotel, we're gonna have people coming in and out, and I think that's just gonna degrade the character of our town. Those are my two main points that I'd like to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. Sixth, we have Linda Mulcahy.
Good evening. I am opposed to it. I believe they need to start all over because they haven't earned the trust in good faith with the community. This is our home. This is where we live. They have not shown they respect our neighborhood. This is our neighborhood. Also, I understand, and I wanted to ask a question, but I can't. They cleared land they weren't permitted to do. Then the board found out about it later. That's a betrayal of our trust. Also, when the project started in 2020, and I used to walk that route, they took debris from the building and set it on fire. They were burning the crap. This is our neighborhood. Why should we trust you to come into our neighborhood and disrespect us and let us live with situations that we would never do ourselves? I'm opposed.
Thank you, Linda. Seventh, I have a Patricia Scott.
My name's Patricia Scott. I live at 434 Joyce Lane.
We can't hear you, Tricia.
Okay, I'm Patricia Scott at 434 Joyce Lane. So I'm on the corner of Joyce Lane and Lucas. And we already have an unbelievable amount of traffic, especially at rush hour. And as you know, Lucas, I don't know if it's, the speed limit is 45 or 50, but cars go in excess of 60 and up there. And there's like a downhill and then an uphill. And of course a downhill and uphill there. And that corner is a hard one for most people to navigate because it's hard to really see there, that angle of that corner. So I'm going to reiterate that I support everything that was said against this permit, or what is it called? This
Special use permit.
special use permit. I say just let it go, let it lapse. This is not in keeping with the town of Hurley and what we're all about. So, it's one thing on the existing use there that of that restaurant, but it's another thing to have this whole built up, basically hotel in whatever form it's going to be. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh? So, hi, I'm Peter Humphreys. I'm Deputy Supervisor for the town. I've heard a lot of complaints about the speeding on Joyce Lane. Town board has purchased a sign, one of those speed signs. If you called the highway department, you did? Has it been put up?
Yes.
How long do we need to put it there again? Because right now it's just sitting.
We need it most permanently there. It's a big problem.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. We got a couple more. I haven't gotten to that in the first.
Oh, okay.
8. Brian, is it? Hughes. You have the floor.
All right, sir. I will keep it brief. My name is Brian Putes, and I live at 171 Heritage Drive, adjacent property to the one we're talking about tonight. I'd like to start with saying that I did receive a notice about this hearing on Friday. However, it referenced the wrong project. So, and I don't see any of the immediate neighbors that were listed there here, and I'm assuming they were probably like me and dismissed it as a mistake. And the only reason I knew about this hearing was from somebody sent me a picture of the ad in the paper. So I feel like that's a kind of a problem right off the get-go.
I may ask you, what was the project listed on your
The
notification?
Montefiore School District one.
Okay.
But it listed all the neighbors in our neighborhood, but it listed the wrong project, so I just figured it was a mistake, but apparently it turned out obviously that this was the correct meeting, so I'm not sure if any of my other neighbors dismissed the mistake and didn't show up tonight, so.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
So, just to note that.
Noted.
Other than that, you know, I agree with everything that's been said. As a direct neighbor to this project, you know, it's way out of scale for our small residential neighborhood. You know, me and my family bought this house there 3 years ago for the quiet neighborhood that it was to raise our family. And, you know, increasing traffic for 50-some units coming and going all day long is not what we agreed to pay a rather large amount of taxes to support. You know, like, that's not why we chose Hurley. And so that's my gripe there. And I can speak firsthand experience to the ongoing not taking care of the property, we'll say, up there, and the crime and the vandalism. I've seen it firsthand. I've talked to people that live even closer than me, what they've seen, and it's, you know, nobody takes care of it. Nobody cares at the moment, you know. And what, like was said before, who's to say we're going to care later? Like, you know, they're coming from out of town, dropping into our neighborhood, but they have no connection. They don't, you know, they're just there to, you know, make some money. So that'll do. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Ada Citron, you have the floor.
My name is Ada Citron, and I live at 17 Walton Lane. I'm involved in the Article 78 proceeding against Arizona.
We can't hear you, we can't hear you.
Did you receive the letter from my attorney?
I can't say that regarding.
Well, if your attorney was on Show Me King King?
Yes.
Wait.
I would like that letter to be part of tonight's record. If I need to read it off that paper,
Okay.
may I have that
I see
paper?
that it was, yes, we received it today. Yep, you're more than welcome to read this into it.
I'll get it for you.
Being that it was submitted to us, it will be included in the record. But
I feel like the bailiff.
Town of Hurley Zoning Board of Appeals. Dear ZBA members, this office represents Lynn Bailey and Ada Citron, who reside near the proposed Arizona Hudson Valley Lodging Facility, the project. This letter is submitted in opposition to Arizona Hudson Valley's appeal of the code enforcement officer's denial of a building permit to renovate Hurley House. As set forth in this letter, the appeal must be denied and the CEO's decision upheld. The rest of the letter goes on to support the position, and that is all I have to say.
thank you. I can assure you that although the board probably hasn't had a chance to review that, it will be within our record.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else present in the audience this evening that wishes to speak regarding this? Mr. Glass, you have the floor.
Thank you. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, I've been on Joyce Lane for 40 years. And I asked the question earlier of you what this public hearing is about, so I want to be perfectly clear. This variance that they're asking for now, I personally feel should be denied, flat out denied. They didn't apply.
If I may interject
Yeah.
quickly, just to reiterate what this specific application, they're not seeking any variance from us this evening. What we are here for is that the code enforcement has made a determination that they're 1 year, they have already been approved for this project.
Right.
Green light, they're ready to go.
Right.
What we are here for is that he has determined that as of, I believe the date, February 8th? Is it February 8th, 2022, their 1 year has run out to exercise, I will emphasize the word exercise, exercise the permit that was granted to them. So what we're here for this evening, we're not granting them any type of variance or anything. We're just here to determine whether or not the code enforcement made the proper determination, and if our board supports him or says they have been exercising their right to what they have been approved for already.
Right. So the comments prior to mine, many of them are talking about the project in general, speeds and all that, and that's getting a little gray, a little confusing. I want to be 100% perfectly clear. The right decision has been made by the building inspector. This thing should be stopped and it should start over again. That's point number one. Point number two, and more important to me, I've lived on Joyce Lane for 40 years. I didn't know 55 units were approved there. Now, I know you folks did your due diligence. You published it in the Freeman, which you're supposed to do 10 days prior, whatever.
Planning board.
Planning board. Unfortunately, we knew nothing about it. So consequently, we're not at the public hearing for that event. And if this denial tonight makes this process start from day one all over again, I'm jumping for joy. Because I think it was shoddy in the beginning. And 55 units should never ever been approved because of a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on Joyce Lane. We've talked about the speed. 25 miles an hour is the speed limit there. Now, do we think these folks are going to go down Joyce Lane 25 miles an hour? Absolutely not. Secondly, I'm very concerned about septic. From what I read, they're supposed to have their own municipal treatment plant or something, whatever. I find that hard to believe. Are they going to have 55 drain fields?
This is transgressing into what the planning board stuff was, but I believe they're supposed to be like all-in-one sufficient units, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not going to speak on that this evening.
I got it, Josh. But the point is, I'm very sad. I love Hurley, and I'm very sad I knew nothing about this, and it was put through. Maybe I should start reading the Freeman again. I don't know. But if this tonight, if you deny tonight this, whatever this process is, if you agree with the building inspector, which I do, I applaud the zoning board of appeals.
Thank you very much, Mr. Glass. Is there anybody in the audience?
I'm going to stick my stuff in here. If there's anyone here, the Newtown board has we have a new website that is a lot easier to navigate, and things are posted on there. You can also sign up for an email blast where certain things will automatically come to your email so you don't miss things like that.
With all due respect, the website hasn't been updated since May on a lot of things. So, I mean, I've been there.
That's
okay. We're getting outside of the topic of the public hearing at this moment. Thank you. Is there anybody else present in the audience this evening that wishes to add any commentary to the public hearing record at this time? Please approach the podium and state your name once again, please.
My name is Joel Stedler. I live at 323 Joyce Lane.
Louder, Joel. Sorry.
Is that better? Yes. Okay. My name is Joel Stedler. I live at 323 Joyce Lane. I was going to say all of the things that Pete said, but not nearly as well as he said them, so I would like to agree with Pete. And also, again, note that I don't think the infrastructure in that area is capable of handling that many more units. I've run through that loop, Joyce Lane to Lucas to Zandhope, at least 3 times a week, and I'm already forced off the road a couple times a week just by the amount of traffic that's there now. So I really think that starting this over from scratch, public comment, I think is the right way to go with that.
Thank you, Joel. Is there anybody else? Please approach the podium and state your name.
I'm Chuck Sokolowski at 390 Joyce Lane. Just in reference to this whole project, it was something that most of us were not aware of that it was approved. but just speaking in reference to Joy's Lane in itself, it's not really a two-lane road, 25 miles an hour speed limit, as Mr. Glass has stated. It's barely enough to fit two vehicles on it, and it's a bypass road, as was stated before. It's a shortcut to get from one major road to another major road. And the speed limit, even though we may have the signs up and everything else, might be there for 30 days, once a year. It's not stopping at different times. The local law enforcement, they can't come there because of their own jobs and everything else. It's not that important. But the road itself is not something that is conducive to high traffic. Not to mention families, animals, pets that are on this road, people walking because it's a 25 mile an hour zone, then cars coming by 50 miles an hour right past you, not even slowing down, not even thinking. And this is what's going to end up happening, just as conducive to convenience. And so it's something that, because of this, it's something that should strongly be thought about to disapprove the ongoing of this situation, because of how it's going to curtail the local Hurley residents. And it's definitely going to take away from the serenity of the area in itself. And so it should strongly be looked the other way. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any commentary for the record before I turn the floor over to the applicant's representatives?
I forgot to say where I live. Can you add that? I was one of the second ones to get it. 309 Joy's Lane.
309 Joy's, that's for London, okay, I'll write it right
21 years. Thank you.
Got it. At this time, I would like to turn the floor over to, hold up.
There were also 2 other letters that came today via email. I just want the board and the public to know that they came into the record. One is from Paul and Mary Hakeem.
Would you like to read those into the minutes for us?
Sure will.
So that the public may hear them as well?
Dear zoning board members, I'm sorry that I am unable to attend this evening's public hearing in person.
No, I'll get rid of this.
Please accept this email as our formal comments pertaining to this application. I am in full support of this project, receiving its permits and being able to commence construction. We live on the access road, and I anticipate no increase in traffic, and I am sure the planning board or building department will not and cannot approve if the Board of Health has not issued permits for both the water supply and sewage disposal. Please do not let this project be delayed any longer. Twin Lakes has been in operation for over 60 years and hosts multiple generations of local family events and weddings. It also served as a nice place for out-of-town visitors to enjoy the property and nearby state and preserve property. The applicant intends to make major upgrades to the facility with a nominal increase in the number of units on the approximately 50-acre site. It hurts me to walk past and see the property stagnant. It will not take long for the town to lose the land tax revenue and county occupancy tax if this were to stay shuttered any longer due to some minor technicalities after going this far through the process. We need the tax base. Thank you for your attention to this project, Paul and Mary Hakeem. And then, hold on, there's one more.
I have a question. Do we have an address for that person?
They live right next to it. They live pretty close. I believe.
Oh, wait, maybe they say it at the bottom.
Sold the property to
They don't say their address. This is just, I'm just entering the things in.
They live on Heritage Drive.
And hold on, there's one more.
the sellers of the property.
Mr. Hakeem has sold the property to the current
Oh,
owners.
no, sorry, this is Cedar. This is Cedar. Okay.
All right.
So then we don't see it. It was to Cedar.
It's for Cedar, so it's for the other
I'll read it.
application, public hearing before us. Certainly, as long as it's a new comment and not reiterating it. Okay.
I don't know if this is allowed, but you can stop me if it's not. With regard to that previous comment, that comment was made by the people that sold the property to the new developers, so their commentary is biased in my opinion. So given all the other things that are said by the people that live in the direct area that are going to be immediately impacted, we feel that should be given due consideration. And since they failed to live up to the requirements of the initial permit, we have no reason to believe they'll live up to anything going forward, and we believe strongly it should be done.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Is it Sheik? Sheik?
Yes. Thank you.
So I thank the board again for the time this evening. And I want to first say that I appreciate all of the public comments. And we do take your comments seriously. And I want to share with everybody here, because there's been a lot of comments about traffic. Right? So I live in a town in the middle of New Jersey called East Brunswick, New Jersey. And we're not the largest town in New Jersey. We're also not the smallest town in New Jersey. We like to think we're a nice town. And I moved into the town in 2009. Shortly after buying what we believed to be the house that we would live in for the rest of our lives, we realized that we were on a shortcut between a main thoroughfare and the entrance to the New Jersey Turnpike. When we moved into our house, my older daughter was 3.5 years old, and my second daughter was just born. Now you can imagine, we moved into the house, you know, with the understanding that our kids would be playing on the street, riding bikes, the whole 9 yards. And what we soon discovered was, just as some of you people are complaining about traffic on Joyce Lane and some neighboring streets, there are people that use the shortcut, right, in an illegal way. People zoom down the streets without a care of, you know, what's going on, without a care of your neighbors, without anything, right? And it was very disconcerting to me. So what I did in response, right, is started calling up the police department. And I asked the police department to start putting up those radar signs, right, where people can see the speed that they're going at. I asked I don't remember what board it is, but the people, the traffic people, right, to actually paint on the street the speed limit in 4 different locations. I've asked for speed bumps, right? I've asked for signs to direct that say this is local traffic only, right? And I've kept at it for about 13 years, right? Not one of my requests have been fulfilled. And to this day, still have people speeding down our street, right? My wife has caught me chasing these cars in my car.
Mr. Sheik, if you could keep your commentary to the application.
I appreciate that, Chairman.
I don't want to cut you off, but...
I understand. The point I'm trying to make, right, in a long-winded way, is that the illegal traffic activity, right, has nothing to do with anything else that's going on in the street. It's a shortcut, right? And people are going to use it. And those are people in my town. They may be people out of our town, right? And so I understand completely the traffic issues that everyone is bringing up. But our development is not even there yet. So those traffic issues that you're already having cannot be caused by our development, right? Now, the other thing that I will say is, right, that, you know, those are planning board issues, right? And when we submitted our application to the planning board, it was approved, there was a traffic study done. So the planning board certainly considered a traffic study, right? Now, you know, I understand that people didn't get an opportunity to understand that the project was going on, but again, we're following the rules that are in place, right? So I'll move on to some of the other things that have been mentioned, right? There is There was a notation about crime, right? And yes, you know, the project has been vandalized. And when we noticed that the project was vandalized, we informed the police. We have cameras up at the location, and we had one instance where those cameras were cut off. We believe that those perpetrators are, you know, have been caught by the police, and we're in full support of the police doing what they need to do. Maintenance of the location, we keep up with our maintenance of the location, right? Does grass grow as, you know, faster than we can cut it? Absolutely. But we maintain the location because we have a vested interest to maintain the location. It doesn't make any sense for us not to maintain the location. And you know, there was a comment regarding, you know, crime increasing when, you know, the project finally opens. I don't know. I mean, we're building a luxury establishment, so I would hope there's no crime in the area. You know, and, you know, one of the reasons that we chose Hurley for this development, you know, was a low crime rate. And we anticipate that we've got a good market for the luxury establishment that we're trying to create. I will note that there are no violations on the property. You know, so I understand people are raising concerns about maintenance and this kind of stuff, but there's been no violations cited whatsoever. There was a fire. There was a fire started by a very bad contractor that we employed at a certain period of time. And once we found out that he was illegally burning things, he was fired, right? The situation was corrected. That fire that he illegally started caused us to have to do an asbestos remediation that was not in our budget, but that we paid over $200,000 for because we believe environmental safety, right? Our project manager, Augustine DeSantantonio, he's sitting in the back there, he stopped that fire, right? As soon as he found that it happened. Now, another issue that I'll raise, Mr. Hakeem, his letter to the board. Do I believe that Mr. Hakeem is biased? Not any more than anybody else is biased. He wants to see the project go forward. And does he have a vested interest in seeing the project go forward? No, he's already sold, right? So, you know, so I don't think he's got a continuing vested interest in the project. So now that all being said, I hope I've addressed everyone's concerns. And if people have more concerns about the project, you know, we're certainly open to people calling us and reaching out. You know, would I support signs on Joy's Lane directing traffic somewhere else? Absolutely, right? The same way that, you know, when it was raised at the planning board hearing that traffic shouldn't go down Walton Lane, one of the conditions in our approval was that a sign be put up directing people the other way. We put that sign up, right? Now, whether people adhere to the signage, it's not in our control, right? But all of those issues are not what's before the board tonight, right? So what's before the board tonight is the CEO's determination that under town law section 210-40B4, the town had a right to revoke our special use permit. And I will say this is what the town law says. It says any special use permit which is not exercised within 1 year from the date of issuance is hereby declared to be revoked without further hearing by the planning board. So the question is, was our special use permit exercised within 1 year? And I go back again to the fact that the town law does not define the word exercise. So we go to the normal dictionary definition of exercise. What does exercise mean? Does exercise mean completing all conditions? I take the position that that's not what it means, because if the planning board meant that all conditions had to be completed within 1 year, or if the legislature determined that exercise means completion, they would have used the word completion. Two different meanings, two different words. They said the word exercise, right? And what does it take to exercise a special use permit? Right? Now, what you've heard is you've even heard some people in the crowd today talk about DEC and approvals and everything like that, right? Some of these conditions that were imposed through the special use permit are not within our control. The only thing that we can do is we can apply for things, right? We have to wait to hear back from state agencies. Reports have to be done. Surveys have to be conducted. All these things take time, right? it's not practical to have finished all of those conditions in the special use permit within 1 year. The question is, did we exercise? Did we start to implement and work towards getting open? And I would submit yes. And so what's been submitted to the to the zoning board this evening, right, is, like I said, as requested, a detailed timeline of what we have done with respect to this project. And we started this project with this town August 31st, 2018. And that's when the initial application was made to the planning board for approval of our site. We worked through that planning board process all the way until November 21st, 2019, when we first got approval for the special use permit. Once we got that approval, we started working, right, on satisfying the conditions that the planning board had created for us. Right? We had a challenge from a couple of people in the town to the special use permit that was granted. And in April of 2020, a court did say that the special use permit was revoked. Why? Because what the court had said was that the planning board did not classify the mobile cabins that we were putting on site. So some people may not.
I'm going to have to
yeah.
stop you at the moment. Just we're going back into previously determined things.
I'll try to speed it up.
Yeah.
3 minutes, right?
Is it 3 minutes? 3 minutes?
Well,
Why is this man talking for 15 minutes?
they represent the applicant, so
Public
he's
hearing. Public
so-
hearing in 3 minute limit, that's what I heard. I didn't hear that.
the public is given the time to speak under the constraints.
So how much time
Yes.
did you get?
Well, we haven't set a
Give
term
us a time
for.
limit.
Okay, complete.
For the
We're
public-
moving things along. Okay, this is.
Chairperson, I'm happy to finish in 3 minutes.
Thank you. I think.
Plus the time here.
So our work continued, right? And then we came back and we worked with the CEO at that time to classify those mobile cabins, right? Went back in front of the planning board and got approval again February 8th, 2021. At that point in time, the CEO's determination was challenged by certain townspeople again, right? This board upheld the determination of the CEO at that point in time that the mobile cabins have been properly classified. And we continue to work, right? So from February 8th, 2021, which was when the last special use permit was granted, right? Now the question is, did we continue to exercise towards that special use permit, right? And I will let Mr. Ripa take the rest of my time to explain to you what has been going on with the project since then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, for the record, Pat Ripa again. So the applicant at that time progressed the project further by making an application to New York State DEC for a wastewater treatment plant. This wastewater treatment plant is a manufactured unit. It's probably about the size of this room to about maybe where I'm standing. And just to give you some idea, what happens in that instance is water is just sent into this unit, filtered, has to be approved by the DEC, the EPA, etc. And it goes back out into basically the wetlands on site at a drinking water standard. So to explain that process a little bit, it's a very iterative process. Could take a couple of years, as well as the other issues that we had faced along the way, which were the original plant that we had used in the design and report was produced by Advanced Water Solutions, or Active Water Solutions, sorry. And they went out of business during COVID. So with that being said, the applicant then had to go and find a new manufacturer for this plant, had to produce a new report, and had to continue this process along. And during that process, there are several iterations, as I mentioned earlier, where the DEC will issue draft effluent limits. They could do that multiple times. They could issue final effluent limits. And along that process, you are constantly tweaking your design and trying to optimize everything and keep costs as low as possible, as well as getting the most efficient design. So at this stage here, we're still going through that process with the DEC, and I believe we have received draft F1 limits from them. I don't have that time. Last we received them, I think, February, and at that time, DEC had also had some concerns about other things on site. Those other things on site have been addressed through multiple studies, ongoing, and the applicant is still adhering to all of that and trying to make a final submission here to get the final F1 limits on the DEC wastewater treatment plant.
Do you have copies of those submissions to the DEC? Or can you obtain those?
The town should have copies of them, being the lead agent on the project. We can submit copies if need be.
Please, because I think that they're after the planning board file was approved, and so, no, we didn't have them. So if you could please submit them so we can be sure we have them.
Okay. I'll take note of that.
As well as any other studies that were completed that are listed on the timeline.
Specifically within the time frame that we're speaking about, from the February 8th, 2021 to 2022, anything you could submit showing things would be beneficial. Officially dated, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few things ongoing as well. There's a secondary well that needs to be planned for the site, just from a protection standpoint, because it essentially will be classified as a public water supply. And the Ulster County Department of Health has to approve that. And due to COVID, they were shut down for a considerable amount of time. From approving any of those applications, even reviewing anything, we had not had any correspondence with them for a long time. We are now continuing those conversations with them and progressing that along at this stage. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of those ongoing issues, including the wastewater treatment plant manufacturer going out of business. That is a key point that you should be aware of. So with that being said, that's the conclusion of what I got. You got anything else, Umar?
Thank you very much.
Are we still able to make comments?
If it's a new comment, I will adhere to it. As I stated, we're going to keep this public hearing open because there's a lot of stuff coming before the board that we need time to review, and we'll allow everybody time to make new submissions if there's any fresh
Could you
thing.
state your name, please?
Winnie Sobolowski, 390 Joyce Lane. I'd like to speak to Mr. Sheik's definition of exercise or exercised. In his context, it's not relative, because the definition of the word exercise should have been defined at the initiation of the permit, if that's what he wished. In this context, the word exercise or exercise speaks to intent. And in my view, and I think it would be upheld in a court of law, in this context, it was the intent of what the permit meant and what the planning board was intending when it instituted the word exercise. So therefore, his definition, the dictionary definition of exercise, is not applicable in this context. It's really the intent of the word.
Thank you very much. So, certainly, by all means.
So, Mr. Sheik, you implied that it wouldn't be possible to meet the conditions of approval within the 1 year period. But is there any reason why you couldn't have continued before the planning board until you got the outside agency approvals before getting approval from the planning board, so that you didn't have so many conditions?
Sure, I can address that. So the language in the resolution, right, and just to address the prior comment, so the word exercise does not appear in the planning board resolution. The word exercise comes from the town law, right? So we don't have an opportunity to comment on the town law. We simply adhere to the town law. But if you give me 1 minute, so in the resolution, one of the conditions of the special use permit says that the special use permit shall be subject to an annual renewal, which shall consist of an annual inspection by the Town of Hurley Code Enforcement Officer, Now, since one of the issues that we've had is the Town of Hurley Code Enforcement Officer did not do any annual inspections on the site. It says if no violations are cited, the Code Enforcement Officer shall be authorized to renew the special use permit. If violations are cited, the applicant shall be required to reapply to the Town of Hurley Planning Board to renew their special use permit. So, one, there was no annual inspection done by the town's code enforcement officer. And number two, there's no violation cited anyway. So the way we read this resolution is that the special use permit continues, right, on a yearly basis until there's an issue that comes up from an annual inspection.
Even if that condition is as you are reading it and the planning board had authority to put it in, the way you've just read it gives the CEO discretion to renew. I didn't hear you say must renew.
So the words of the resolution, right, I'm not interpreting, I'm just reading you the words, right? It says if no violations are cited, the CEO shall be authorized to renew the special use permit, right?
Right.
But the CEO here did not cancel the special use permit based on an annual inspection or any citation of violations. The CEO specifically cited to the town law and said that the special use permit was not exercised within 1 year of the date of issuance, right? So I always say, look, tell me what the rules are and I'll play by your rules. So if we're here appealing the CEO's action is not based on what the resolution says. You can't change the rules halfway through the appeal. We're here because the CEO said that we did not exercise our special use permit within 1 year. And I submit that we did.
If it was the planning board's intent for us to come back and renew that permit, it should have explicitly said so in the resolution. It does not do that. Additionally, in reference to your question earlier about the other permits that would be required for the site, those are conditions of approval. If they're not met, you cannot get the approval. You have to meet those conditions. And that's typical for special use permit. That's typical for the process. Those permits with DEC, as I mentioned earlier, could be ongoing for years. They could take a considerable amount of time, and to drag the public and the planning board through that process for that long of time, it's not an ideal situation for anybody.
Do you have a question, sir?
Yeah, just to make a statement, because Chuck Sokolowski, 390 Joyce Lane.
Can you talk to the microphone, please? A statement was made that the special use permit was for a 1-year term. And it's implied that I would think if it's for a 1-year term, that they would have to reapply for their special use permit after 1 year. And if they did not reapply, it would become void, whether or not anything else. So if they did not reapply for a special use permit after February 8th of 2022, then I would think that it would be null and void at that point unless they reapply. And I don't think they've reapplied. So whether or not there's other factors involved for approval with the CEO, if they didn't have an inspection, there's still a reapplying affirmation within that permit for a 1-year term. And nothing was taken on their side that I've heard of that they've reapplied for their special use permit.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to make the call that, as I stated previously, we're going to keep this public hearing open. We still have another large public hearing before us this evening. Any further commentary, I encourage everybody to either write in submissions and submit to, what is it, planning?
Planning@townofhurley.org. And Town of Hurley is all one word. If you didn't hear me, sorry, it's planning@townofhurley, all one word, .org.
And if you choose not to make written submissions, we will be having a public hearing still open on this matter at our next October meeting, which will be able to come back and further state any concerns. But in the act of trying to keep the meeting moving and still give ample time to the folks here to address the next large matter, how do I close it?
Nope, we need a motion to continue.
Motion to continue. Okay, excellent.
So it's projected, so October
13th.
13. Yep.
And can we at 7 p.m. or thereafter?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
specific time.
That's fine.
Okay.
7 p.m. or
I have no idea what the agenda is.
So was it continued?
So we're gonna have a lot of public hearings, so
Yeah.
next month, so where do you want to kind of give a couple, want to begin first? You want to do the others first? You want to say 8 o'clock?
Have a continuance of this public hearing for our next meeting, October 13th
At 8 o'clock.
at approximately 8 p.m. October
13th.
October 13th. Seconded by Kara. All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands? All in favor, none opposed.
No extensions? Yes.
Yes. Any? Andy, did you have a question for? I'm sorry, I missed.
I just, so before October, what I'd like to see is all the conditions 4 through 9, that this permit will granted on condition of.
Guys,
I'd
whoever's
like to
talking.
see the writing of the
Peter.
records that show that these things were applied. Not just the DEC.
Exercise.
4 through 9.
Okay. Do it.
So what's the Andy say?
Could you repeat that, please? Can't hear what everybody's talking about.
Right, so Andy, can you repeat what you said, because I didn't hear you earlier.
So as I read the special use permit, it was granted on condition of these 5 things. You mentioned one thing, the DEC. That sounds like you did due diligence. If you give us the records for all 5 of those, that we could see you submitted for all those, that would give us information we need.
Yes, but just on the applicant, right, there are some things that are outside of our control, right? So we can make a submission on something and not hear back from an entity or agency at an appropriate time.
Show us the submission for those
Right.
5 things.
Okay, yeah.
Right, you've given
But
us
there's
a
also-
timeline, but there's no backup data.
Okay, there's also financial obligations that are as part of that too, right? Like if you can't get a wastewater treatment plant permit, you may not want to continue along with other things within that process.
And all of that will help us understand the points.
Okay, understood.
Can we just go through exactly the items that we're talking about?
Let's just make a submission to the board, or we'll cover it at the next one.
No, I just want to be, because you mentioned 5 items, right? So,
Each condition of your resolution of approval, there's a resolution and amended resolution.
Right.
Show how you did it.
okay, and so you're looking for the underlying documents that were submitted. I just want to be clear to the board, like,
Financial data, what's been transacted, so you can understand what has actually been done based on the
okay, I understand. I just want to be clear to the board that some of these things do not happen until other conditions have been met. So and just for instance, right, the furnishing of a performance bond, right, happens when everything else is complete, and that's something that comes from the town. So
Right, so when you're managing a project, there's always going to be dependencies. Just give us the status of that and let us know if there's a dependency.
sure, I understand.
Will do.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you.
And the CEO is
So-
authorized but not required. I have the,
Okay.
well, he got this one. Yes.
All right. So now we've passed our 9 o'clock time frame.
I
A
know.
little bit off on this one.
I switcheroo. I tried.
Very much. Okay. I believe we have another attorney ready to
We've got two,
step in. Cedar East Development / Ontiora School District, better known as the West Hurley School Project, at 97 Cedar Street in West Hurley. The appeal made on, let's see if I'm reading this correctly, appeal of June 10th, 2022, determination by CEO David Allen denying a building permit because conditions from the August 30th, 2021 site plan, planning board approval had not been met. We have an attorney here with us this evening, Larry Winoski, representing the CEO, Dave. And we also have with us John Lyons to help the ZBA with this issue. Seconded by Deb. All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands. All in favor, none opposed. So we will begin with the first person to sign in, which already spoke. Lauren Schultes. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
You have the floor. Just state your address, please.
Yeah, my name is Lauren Schultes, and I reside at 67 Cedar Street. Make this short, I've lived there over 50 years, since I've been about 8 years old. What a lot of people don't understand is these roads are not made for today's traffic. In our time now, the runoff from our weather, the roads aren't wide enough, the deliveries that are made, okay, you can barely pass 2 trucks in the town of Hurley. And that pertains to all of our roads, okay? You plow snow in the town of Hurley, where Cedar Street is, you can't push the snow back. And last year, you could barely get 2 cars by. The telephone poles are out by the road, so you have to look at traffic and the way people drive. All right, people do not obey signs, and the end of the story, that's a big issue. The other concern is water. Okay, we just went through a drought. A lot of people were having water issues. Okay, now we just had 7 inches of rain. Now at my property, over the years, the water will run into the field, into the firehouse field, and it will sit there for days without going anywhere because it's all bedrock. My land gets inundated with water because they changed the road. The runoff isn't proper, there's no pitch. The water comes down my driveway and literally lays there ankle deep. It was there for so long during the hurricane, all the lawn died, turned to mud. It wouldn't go anywhere, okay? It won't drain. You can't dig deep enough to make it drain. The school has been built on a pond. We used to ice skate there years ago. You dig down in Herdman's backyard or at Frangello's, 10 feet, that water will run in that hole and stay there for months. Okay? Even on this thing with the runoff, things are changing very drastically. We do not have the water. The water in West Hurley is not there. All the wells around by the school are shallow wells. They're 80 feet, 100 feet. They go dry. The school is closed during the summertime. There's nobody in there. Now we're going to have water usage year-round. It's going to be a problem. 25 years ago, I ran out of water. 7 months before I got my well built. Okay? So it's a big problem. And the other thing is drainage with that retention pond. I hope they look into updating that retention pond that is behind the old school, which does not drain. Hurricane Floyd, that water was all the way out to the firehouse. So there's a lot of issues to be looked at. Things are changing. And drainage isn't there. Septic systems are coming up, and people are using water like it's free. And the new people here, they have no respect on the water. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Georgianne Chapin. Chapin.
Hi, I'm Georgianne Chapin. I live at 1418 State Route 28. I also was not noticed about this, but I did speak to the secretary, and I think that's been rectified. I think there's some other people that weren't noticed about this hearing. I'm going to stick to one issue. I think that the code enforcement officer's decision to call a moratorium on the conditions should be approved. The builders were given an enormous list of conditions, but there's one bedrock condition, and that is the speedies permit, the state pollutant discharge elimination permit. It's been talked about since these developers first came to West Hurley and declared their intention to develop a school property. The property is still owned by the Onteora School District. The developers do not own the property. They cannot get a speedies permit if they don't own the property. If the school district gets a speedies permit, they cannot transfer it to anybody else. So the developers have not met the most fundamental condition to develop that property, which is to buy it and get a speedies permit. And there's no movement on that because they can't even apply for it until they own it. So to me, there are many other things, I assume, that have not been met, that have not been moved forward. But without this permit, the property cannot be developed. And whether they're going to get the permit with all the wastewater problems on the property, the fact that there is no appropriate septic disposal now, it's a sand trap, and all the other problems that have been referred to are completely legitimate. But on this alone, that permit has expired, and I think it's just a black and white issue. So thank you.
Thank you for speaking directly to the issue before us this evening. Next we have a Jen, is it Muse?
Hi, Jen Muse. I am a taxpayer to the town of Hurley. I don't wish to give my address in the witness protection plan. I am just concurring with every single thing that Georgianne Chapin just stated. And there's a reason we're here and here so late after all the other issues that were talked about tonight. And that is that this developer does not own this land and therefore cannot get the speedy permit, and it's clear cut, it's black and white. Let's end it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Nash Burley? Am I reading that properly?
It's Nashburg, 93 Cedar Street. The fact that the letters didn't go out to the people, we've been at multiple meetings, lots of the people here, and it seems like some of the more outspoken people didn't receive letters. Maybe it was just a fluke that it happened that way, but I'd just like to point that out.
I can assure you it was not intentional.
Okay, well, maybe it could be explained why the person that shares the right-of-way with the Cedar East Development property didn't receive a letter. Because we pay our tax, we get our tax bill, but we don't get the letter. And anyway, couple things. Has he been making his quarterly payments to the school? If not, it kind of points to the character. If he's not keeping up with that. At one of the meetings, it was said by one of the Cedar East personnel that the right-of-way issues have been addressed. Well, we're the ones that share the right-of-way, and no one has addressed anything with us. So again, it speaks to the character of the people that are looking to move forward with this project. And something a lot of people don't really think about is emergency services. This guy wants to put 50 to 100 people into a town that's already struggling to provide emergency services for its townspeople. Has he offered anything to help out, maybe lighten that burden in some fashion? I'm in the emergency services of a neighboring town, and we are repeatedly called into West Hurley, Olive, and that depletes our resources. I don't think any of the people that we buying these units are going to be volunteering. I could be wrong. It would be great if I was wrong. I'd be happy if I was wrong. But I don't see that happening. And that's all I got for now. And Thank you, Georgianne, for all you said, very well said.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. I have Cheryl Herdman next on the list.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Herdman. I live at 85 Cedar Street, West Hurley. Georgianne, thank you. I agree with Georgianne and I agree with Nate. My backyard is the school. I have the letter that was sent out. I never got one. And it says that the people, I have spoken to Maggie, yes, she explained what went on. That's not an excuse to me. I got the other ones. We did not get this one. My backyard is the school. Just like Naish, who lives 2 houses down from me, we did not get, there are people on this list who should never have gotten them because we don't even know who they are. They do not adjust, they are not next to the school. I'm very upset about this because I've gotten the other ones from the other hearings. But this one, I didn't know. If I wouldn't have known about this unless my sister-in-law told us that there was a letter in that, and I got a copy of it. I think this is very poorly done. And also, I do want to say that since we do, our backyard is the school, we do have a lot of problems. They have not addressed lighting, noise, the traffic. I live on a very small street. It should be it used to be a one-way street. It used to be a one-way street. Then things changed. The school is open 180 days a year, not 365 days that someone else is going to be living there. Water is a very big issue. It's a very big issue in that town, and I'm sorry. With people coming from who knows where, who don't respect water, I'm from the city, I understand. We used to leave the faucet running all the time. Who cared? I live here now, brush my teeth, the faucet goes off. Take a shower. I use a shower thing because water now is a big commodity here. I don't know who's going to be living there. And I'm sorry, I don't think that they have met any of the conditions that they were supposed to meet from the planning board either. So I really think this should be really looked into and not just, oh well, you know, as things happen here. But this not getting this letter really, really upset me. And I did speak to Maggie and she did apologize and I do accept her apology. But I do have a concern about how things are being done. When I live I live right there. My backyard is the school.
Sir, well, as I stated, we will be keeping the public hearing open on this matter into the next month, and perhaps we can look at sending letters out. Yes.
And there's a couple of people that I used the previous list that was in the planning board file, assuming
But we were
that was
on
the
that
best.
list. We got letters the last time, so I don't know.
They're new homeowners too.
There are new homeowners. There's someone who's dead, who's been dead for 5 years on this list. Okay?
I have spoken to the people, I believe that there were errors and they will be corrected for the next meeting.
And there's someone who
I can't personally speak to the process of sending the letters out or anything like that, but I will stand next to Maggie if she's apologizing.
No, she
in
has
honest
apologized. I do accept her apology, but I wanted you to know that there were mistakes here, okay? And the process. So, that's all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Herdman. Is there anybody else present in the audience this evening that wishes to speak on this application? Ma'am, we'll go with you next. Just approach the podium and just state your name and your address, please.
I'll be quick. Angela Gaudioso, 12 Dover Court in West Hurley. Further to what Cheryl Herdman just said, I want to add that there are many of us who don't live on Cedar Street, but we live in that small community. And it seems to me, I know that there are maybe regulations about your property has to abut you know, the location of the school. I'm sorry, but this particular undertaking, this development, will dramatically affect the entire neighborhood. And that includes those of us on the other side of 375 and so many more, as well as Woodstock. So this notion that only certain people should be notified or that a small ad is taken out in the Daily Freeman, that's not sufficient. And I think it's incumbent upon the town or whichever board wants to do it to give folks, oh, by the way, the Daily Freeman, maybe half of the people subscribe to the publication.
Don't receive the paper.
And they don't receive the paper when they do. There needs to be a much more, a much stronger effort to get out to the majority of the people in the community. And by the way, it hasn't escaped our notice that we are the last on this list in order of the points that are being made tonight, and that really hurts because it really affects so many more people than just an applicant or two about some of their property. And I respect them all. However, this has happened before. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Angela. I believe, ma'am?
Thank you. My name is Virginia Kaufman. I live at 50 Wall Street in West Hurley. I don't understand why this conversation is still continuing because it's been established many times that there's not enough water in our area. And as far as I understand, in the original applications, that was supposed to be dealt with by the applicants. But as everybody has said repeatedly, traffic, if I'm going down my street, if there's a truck coming the other way, I have to pull over. There's not enough room in several spots for 2 cars to pass. But just briefly, I'd like to read you the definition of unjust enrichment, which would be, in this case, I believe. In laws of equity, unjust enrichment occurs when one person is enriched at the expense of another in circumstances that the law sees as unjust. Where an individual is unjustly enriched, the law imposes an obligation upon the recipient to make restitution. So if this proceeds, I would like to know where we would all receive our restitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Virginia. Ma'am?
My name is Sherry Angergatschuk. I live at 81 Cedar Street. The back of our property is adjacent, abuts the school property that rounds around the back into the wooded area. I've lived there now 38 years. The traffic has increased a little bit, but not much. We have the firehouse on the turn that would be going into that property. It would cause a dangerous traffic situation. It's difficult getting out onto Route 28 now. With additional apartments there, it would be almost impossible. We'd have to request to have a traffic light there. Going down to 375, the same thing. It's very difficult to get out nowadays. We saw that the Dunkin' Donuts project has gotten somewhat of approval to proceed with whatever. That's additional traffic. The water levels can't handle it. Over a year ago, we received a letter asking us if we would be interested if a private water company would come in to supply water. Why would we need that if our wells were sufficient enough? But having a 55 apartment unit there, water would be used for showers, for cooking, for laundry, every day. It's not like the school was there. A septic. How can the ground, how can that area, hold up? How can it handle that? It can't. This is not a project that's good for an area this size. It's a small neighborhood, a small community. We do need affordable housing, but that's not the ideal place for that. There are other properties available. There are vacant properties in Kingston and Ulster County. Why aren't they looking at that? Something that would make more sense. I oppose it, and I will fight it as much as I can, even as much as moving out of the area if it comes in. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sherry. Step right up.
I just wanted to request that we stick to the issue at hand, which is the determination of this permit. I mean, clearly people are opposed to it. We've gone through this before they got this, this permit that had all these restrictions on it. So if we could ask the code enforcement officer to address this now, since we've stayed here so late, and we're always put at the end of the meeting. I also want to request that next meeting we get put before Arizona and everybody else, so we can get it moving. I just would like us to focus on what we're actually here for, which is not to complain about the site.
I apologize for you being at the very end. I made that executive decision to put the folks with the very small applications. The new applications always go first. And then as far as the public hearing goes, we handle them in the order that they came to us. So, sorry that this one was at the end.
But can we focus on the actual reason we're here tonight?
We certainly can. First, if there's nobody else here to speak from the public and has any more commentary. Ma'am? Yep.
Hi, Barbara Lubo, 48 Brittany Drive. I'm just trying to understand what it says here, because to me it looks like that the building permit was denied. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay, so that we don't need to state our case anymore. The building department has something to say, and then the applicant's representatives will come and talk why they think it shouldn't be denied. So I'm interested in hearing about why it was denied and why they think it shouldn't be denied, and that's what's up.
That is exactly the case. So to just reiterate, the applicant or the project manager of the Cedar Street project has applied for a building permit which has been denied by the code enforcement officer, and they have therefore submitted an application for our board to review and that determination and either overturn it or adhere to it. So that is the precise reason we're here this evening. Before I hand over the floor to the code enforcement officer and the attorney here present, is there anybody here on behalf of the applicant that would like to address the board?
Josh, before they start, there was one letter that came via email that I'll read into the record.
So we'll read that into the record first. I apologize.
It's from Susan Robinson. Dear Chairman, vote Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm writing to state my support for the town of Hurley ruling by Code Enforcement Officer David Allen denying a building permit to Cedar East developers. As you know, Section 21040B4 clearly lays out the requirement that any special use permit which is not exercised within 1 year from the date of issuance is hereby declared to be revoked without, I think they meant this for Arizona.
Adjacent to the property.
Okay. Revoked without any further hearing by the planning board, as well as Section 21040B3 states, whenever the planning board grants a special use permit, appropriate conditions and safeguards and/or time limits may be attached thereto. Given these clear directives in the town zoning code, I'm puzzled as to why the issue is being heard at all by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Perhaps Cedar East was not realistic about the location they chose for a 46-unit apartment complex, given the significant issues that they have already been documented. As a reminder, I laid out my personal well water issue in planning board hearings for a special use permit. It is highly likely that my well ran dry during the hydration test period. This damaged my well pump, which then had to be dug up with special equipment at significant cost. Cedar East needs to be held accountable to the same zoning directives as everyone else. Thank you for your service and your time and attention to this matter at hand. Susan Robinson, 10 Wall Street, West Hurley.
And I apologize, Mr. Morello. I'm going to let you go after the code enforcement officer, just because it kind of makes more sense for him to make his determination and then, I guess, the rebuttal. So, Dave, you have the floor. Dave and Larry. Larry and Dave.
Good evening, my name is Larry Walensky. I'm representing the code enforcement officer. I'm not representing the ZBA in this matter, just to make sure everyone's clear on that one. I'll try and keep my comments to 3 minutes and give you the proper explanation, because it really is very simple. The building inspector denied the building permit on 2 grounds. The first ground was that Cedar made its application without also submitting a signed site plan, so that the building inspector did not have a baseline of what is required for the project to make his review. And also the resolution expressly required and contemplated in several locations a signed site plan. The second reason is that the resolution also specifically required that a valid speedies permit be presented prior to the issuance of any building permit. The building inspector's position is that the resolution requires that speedies permit be in the name of Cedar and also be issued for Cedar's project. In other words, 46 one-bedroom units condominium ownership, authorizing a surface water discharge. There's also been further input from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, which essentially confirms that the need for the permit in whatever fashion to be renewed and go through an entire permit process. So it's as simple as that. The conditions of the resolution were not met. The building inspector has the right and the authority to get a signed site plan, which we understand is customary to have in the town of Hurley. So that's basically it. We've also, oh, by the way, we also, if you want to read the submission that was submitted on behalf of the building inspector that we prepared, it should be on the website. Thanks.
Mike, you're up. Just introduce yourself to the crowd.
Thank you to the board. I'm Mike Moriello. I'm the attorney for the applicant. One of the attorneys for the applicant. The other attorney is Jim Bacon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I will keep my comments brief because the submittals before you are very detailed on both sides. And there's no point in going back through it again, other than to say that I believe that the building inspector was reading the law very, very broadly, and that he doesn't have that level of discretion to read the law in that manner. We've submitted our case law and our citations to the law itself. With respect to the map, I would just say that the map itself, there's no requirement in the zoning law for the map to even be signed. It's not set forth that it has to be signed in the zoning law. But be that as it may, we've been trying to get the map signed for several months now. We have made requests to have it signed. We have duly exercised our special permit and made application for site plan, and we cannot get a response out of the planning board. No response at all. And that has forced us to go in a different manner now. The most important thing to my client, and I think that Kanan Gundas is here tonight, he's one of the principals, and he will emphasize this, is really what we'd like is that the map itself be signed, because we've met the conditions that were required by the board, and have the building inspector review the architectural plans, because we would like to submit that documentation to the Attorney General's office for the condominium review. The condominium review takes quite a while to proceed, and my understanding is that they will not proceed with the review in normal instances unless you can show them a set of architectural plans which has been reviewed. So in my understanding, and I'll have my client explain it to you in his own words, the building permit issuance is not the biggest thing right now. I think we can wade through the Speedies permit and the issues that go along with that. We have stated our position on the Speedies permit. I think that I think we've stated them well and made a very good case that we were asked to present a valid Speedies permit as part of the approval, and that's what we've done. There is a valid permit right now. That has to be transferred, that's correct. But be that as it may, that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue, I think, for my client, and it will not change the status quo at all. We don't need the building permit issued to do this. We don't need a certificate of occupancy. We don't need the Speedies permit. All we would like is for the planning board to sign the map so the building inspector can conduct his review of the architecturals, and we can send the documents to the Attorney General's office. I'll let Kanan take over. And thank you for the time. I'm not going to take any more time.
It's nice to see everyone again. And thank you for your time. Thanks for coming out. It's a wonderful town, and you guys act in concert as a community, and that's to be respected. You have concerns about the site. We understand that. We share those concerns. We did numerous studies, sometimes duplicative, but happily, because these questions that you raise are serious, and we share your concerns. We continue to believe this is a great project. This is an adaptive reuse of an existing unused structure. It was on the market for quite a while with no takers. We met with people in the county planning who really supported the need for this type of housing. We specifically designed the number of units around the existing building envelopes without going outside of the building envelopes, and within the existing design flow for the septic and the water. So we capped the number of units specifically because of what the maximum for the school had been. Will be with new required fixtures for water usage, for toilets, for shower heads, all that, at less than half, our engineers say, of that 5,100 gallons that the school is using. That said,
Notification Center.
we think it's a great project. We think these are the kinds of things to do instead of letting these buildings go to waste. We're aware of the potential impacts, and we have plans to mitigate all those impacts, and they were presented at length in the secret process and the site plan approval process and the special use permit approval process. One of the conditions of the special use permit was that this project be done as condominiums. And this was brought up during the planning process to address concerns of people in the town of a transient sort of rental situation. Nothing that we would intend to do. We would have to stay there and manage it. So of course it's in our best interest to have a stable tenancy. But nevertheless, we agreed to do a condominium project so that there are owners and stakeholders in the community. who, you know, will have a vested interest in taking care of their lawn and driving carefully the whole bit. So one of those conditions is that we proceed as a condominium. In order to meet that condition, we need to have reviewed plans. So in essence, if the plans aren't reviewed, we're prevented from proceeding with one of the conditions on the special use permit. We ask that at the very least we can get a review of the plans so that we can meet one of those conditions. There is a dependency there, and there is no prohibition from reviewing the plans to allow us to continue with that process and meeting the conditions. As Mike stated, in terms of the signing of the maps, we did comply with all the questions regarding the maps, and we did ask for them to be signed, and we got no response. We did get a response from the consultant from the town restating the fact that the site plan met all the conditions and questions that had been raised about it. So the town's own consultant said it was fine, but the planning board had refused to act in signing it. We're going to proceed and try to get that signed as best as possible. The Speedies thing, again, there's a Speedies number, there's a Speedies permit, there's an existing septic that was built for the school, and our project was designed specifically to stay under that design flow. We're not expanding it. We'll probably be using half the capacity with the fixtures that are required today. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I respectfully ask that you consider having the plans reviewed at the very least, so we're not impeded from meeting further conditions on that special use permit. And thanks everyone for staying so late.
Thank you. Does any members of the board have any questions specifically? Or
Can a building permit be issued to a developer who doesn't own the property?
Could you repeat that? I didn't hear you. Can a building permit be issued to a developer who doesn't own the property?
The answer to that is probably yes, if they have the permission of the landowner to be making the application.
It wants?
So even though he doesn't own the property,
That's
he can get a
correct.
building permit.
That's correct.
But a Speedies permit cannot be issued to someone who doesn't own the property. And the previous Speedies permit is not transferable. They've been guessing their way on the Speedies permit all along, but they haven't produced a Speedies permit and they don't own the property. And that alone is an obstruction to moving this project forward. They haven't closed on the property, they don't own the property, they don't have a Speedies permit in their name, and the supposed existing Speedies permit is not transferable, although there's some question whether that permit is even in the name of West Hurley School. Apparently some other, I won't go into that, that's, it's suspended, it's been suspended, okay. That's my understanding too. And they just keep kind of waving that off, oh, Speedies permit, no problem, no problem. There's no Speedies permit, and there's no developing the property without it, and there's no getting it if they don't own the property and apply for it.
we'll be taking that as commentary for the record, correct? Thank you. Is there any further questions from the board regarding this matter? We're going to keep the public hearing open on this. Give us all a chance to digest, as well as the public to submit more commentary to us, as well as our attorney to catch up to speed. We've only just retained a couple days.
I don't know if this needs to be a motion or just a suggestion.
Louder, please.
I don't know if this needs to be a motion or a suggestion. I would like to suggest that the next mailing goes out to every resident in West Hurley.
Yes.
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 Can I just address that? The board can do whatever they want. It's your prerogative to give notice how you see fit, but we object to that. We think the board should follow the law that's prescribed in the zoning law and provide notice fairly, like everyone else gets notice applied to them. We don't want to be treated any differently than any other applicant. I also would I should say too, that just for the record, and this goes from my client too, issues like traffic and water, all those environmental issues have been determined. There is a decision which has been upheld in court. The negative declaration under seeker for the project was upheld, and those decisions have been made and upheld in court. So I just would like to note that objection too to the record. We don't want to be treated differently than anyone else under the law. Thank you.
So from now on, whenever anything happens in West Hurley, everyone gets notified for everything. Okay. Treat them the same.
Well, I believe, is it, he said from now on, everybody, anything in West Hurley, everybody in West Hurley gets notified. There's standard procedures that we've followed from as long as I've been on this board for 6 years now. And it generally does not change. I understand the concerns in this instance that it seems that many people did not receive notification, and people who did receive notification were receiving false notification. This is just being really brought to our board's attention just this evening. So we will address those issues moving forward, I can assure you that. As for sending out a notice to absolutely everybody in the town of West Hurley, I would be very weary of breaking protocol that the town has had for years and years, well before I was on this board, and changing it just for one specific instance.
Are you able to state what the protocol exactly is? Because I know it's beyond adjacent.
So I believe, let's let the secretary chime in just for a second, because she knows it's her job to send out all the notifications, and she's following suit with what has been done for years before she was our secretary.
So actually, most of your applications, you decided that 100 feet is sufficient. For this, I followed this, as I said, I used the list that was used for the planning board, which was 500 feet from the perimeter of the property. And I did not double check if everybody on that list is current through Ulster County Planning. It was only 2 years ago, the list. So I made a very bad assumption that it was all accurate and the same. I put everything together on not the Saturday of Labor Day, the Saturday before. I missed the post office by 5 minutes. I had them all certified. So they went out that Monday, but not by me because I was not here. And when I came back on Wednesday, I went to try to find the little slips, and the town clerk's office said that they didn't want to wait for them at the post office, so they were probably still over there. I went over to the post office, and they were actually still just processing, because I had the amount of public hearings you had tonight, that's how many I sent out. So they only did go out from the post office on Wednesday. And I have heard from a couple of people, Ms. Chapman, she was on the list, but with another person, so it was all the same address, so I just sent it to the one address that listed both people. She told me that she no longer shares that address with that person, so it is not uncommon to get letters back to people that have moved, people whose forwarding has expired. That's why you do them certified, so that you know who got them and who didn't. Out of the 49 letters that I did send out, 3 were wrong. So either the one tonight said it said the wrong thing and the wrong addresses. So out of the 49, 3 were wrong. The others, I tracked them all today, and they have gone wherever they needed to be gone or are still waiting to be picked up at the post office.
A question? Or
Cedar East traffic study included leaving the neighborhood onto Route 375 and onto Route 28. That affects the entire neighborhood. Everyone that lives in that neighborhood will be affected by this. Everyone in that neighborhood should be notified of what is going to possibly happen. Their traffic study included exiting onto 375. and they said there'd be a 2 or 3 second difference.
Can you take a look?
One of the planning board members actually said, what, is everyone driving half a car? I mean,
Cedar Street is a main intersection to enter that development.
the traffic is very different since COVID. There should be a proper traffic study done by the town and by the developer, and let's compare them. Please.
If you can just approach the stand and restate, if you're
Yeah,
making
everybody
statements
please
for
restate
the,
your name because
yes, if
I
you're
don't
making
pronounce
statements for the record to the board, just please make them at the podium.
Cedar East Traffic Study specifically stated that they were going to be using egress onto 28 and onto Route 375. Since COVID, anyone that lives there knows traffic is drastically increased because of the larger population in that area. Everyone in the neighborhood should be notified because this project will affect everyone in John Street, Wall Street, all those streets.
I understand your concerns, but before us this evening is not traffic studies. Our board does not handle traffic studies, so on and so forth.
Well, then you can reiterate to the proper board that the traffic study that was done should be redone, please.
I'm Pete Humphreys again.
Thank you.
Are you part of the West Hurley Firehouse by any chance?
No.
Is there anybody here that is?
What was the question?
West Hurley Fire Department.
What about it?
What I'm saying is everybody needs to know, maybe we could, if we choose to have the meeting, when we only have one, we can have it, maybe work with you guys to have it like we did before.
It'll be more convenient there, yes.
Up there, but then you also have the sign. Maybe we could, once we know the date, that maybe that public hearing will happen at the firehouse, maybe if it's okay with you guys, maybe we can post it on that sign on 375.
That could be arranged.
Yeah, and we all drive by that all the time.
Good idea, Pete.
Andy.
Could I just make a comment about protocol? I agree it makes sense to follow protocol. So let me make an analogy. Sometimes using an old mailing list is not the best approach. You need to update it. Sometimes using old protocols are not the most valid thing. I'd like to suggest we evaluate the protocols we have and whether they're still effective in meeting our goals as a city.
May I just speak to that?
Yes.
May I speak to that briefly? So I think that I understand why this suggestion is being made and I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I think we'll have to take a look at that. So the area that people that have to be notified is something that's specified in the zoning law, and it's normally not something that's a subject of discretion.
Right.
And I know that, I understand the comments that some of these folks are making with regard to the impact of the project. The first duty of the board is to make sure that we comply with the law, and we'll take a look at that and just make sure that gets, we'll take whatever steps are necessary to make sure that for the next public hearing, if any mistakes were made, that those will be corrected and notice will get out into the community. The issue about expanding the notice beyond whatever's required by the statute can sometimes become problematic because the board then can get into a position of having to determine on a case-by-case basis who's within the range of influence of the impacts of a particular project. And while that may be something that may be, let's just say that is something that might be much easier to define in some instances versus others. And so we'll take a look at that issue. I think that the board's desire to want to be fair and to make sure that those citizens who are affected by what the board's considering in this case, that notice of that gets out to people so they have an opportunity to participate in the process, which is a really important part of the process.
Right.
So we'll take a look at it, and who consider the suggestion seriously, and I'll make a recommendation to the board, about where I think we should go on this.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And just correct me if I'm wrong, everyone has the ability to sign up for notifications through the website, and I assume that all of these actions are published there?
Yep, the agenda's published, anything, anything, I mean, I am working on creating also on the planning and zoning page a sidebar where everything from every application will be there on a monthly basis. I'm not there yet, but, so, once that, and when I post something, I can always have it go out to anybody that subscribes. So if people go on to the website and sign up, they can sign up for agendas, notices, they can sign up for a whole multitude of what they want to receive, or they can sign up for one thing.
And currently, the agendas go out when?
No less than a week before. Because the deadline is 2 weeks.
So if someone
before.
signed up for an email, went home tonight, signed up for the email.
Yep.
They would be notified a week in advance.
At least a week in advance.
At least a week in advance.
Right, because the deadline is 2 weeks before, so I take a week to try to get it together, get it all, check with the chairman on it, and post it.
Got it. Thanks for clarifying.
I'll entertain commentary.
Quick.
Certainly.
We now know that the next meeting is October 13th.
Correct.
So why do we have to wait so long to get a notice? Why can't it just go out now? Like tomorrow? Like as soon as we close this meeting, we'll know what the agenda is, right? No?
No, that depends on what is before us 2 weeks ahead of our meeting. There's going to be applications coming in actively all throughout the month. Things shall change. We know for a fact that this will be another public hearing, and hopefully everybody will be receiving due notice. That should be in our regularly allotted ruling for how we send out notices. But that doesn't mean that everybody can't play good neighbors and community and spread the word. This is how I hear about most things. Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment. This is a super important conversation about notification and project. I think that when it comes to a setback and somebody putting a deck on their house, really arguably only the immediate neighbors care, right? But this is really different. And I'm not going to get into talking about all the traffic and all. I think that's probably, that conversation should be limited in the next meeting, because what we're really talking about is a decision, and we all know about these traffic problems. But this project has a much larger impact, whether you agree with the traffic studies or not, whether you agree with the water, availability or not, a much larger impact than me putting a deck on the back of my house, where only my neighbors, my two immediate neighbors, really give a darn, right? So I think that notification needs to be thought of in that way, and maybe the law needs to be modified to reflect that. I don't know what the process is, but I think it would be very useful. The second thing is, absolutely, we shouldn't be using old mailing lists. I mean, if you buy a piece of property, you're immediately on the tax rolls. That can be, there's a way the town can find out who's living there, at least updated every 3 months or something. People move in, they move out, they sell their houses, and so those two things need to be incorporated in decisions made about notice. Thank you.
I agree 100%. Ma'am.
Yeah, so my name is Phyllis Bloom for 48H Brittany Drive. So that means on the other side of 375. Just to kind of give this like a face about like what community is, I would rather not be here at this hour doing this, but the impact of this particular project is enormous for me, living on the other side of 375, both, of course, in terms of traffic, but also in terms of water. There's private water system that was brought up here, and we're part of that system that does not work. And people on the other side of 375, all of us in that district, are affected by the same private water company, for example. And our water is also impacted by anything that goes on with water on either side of 375. But I think that what's important is that we're a community, and this small community of West Hurley is definitely impacted by the entire scene down there. I'm not talking about people who live on the other side of the reservoir necessarily, but our small community there. And I feel like, you know, this particular body and the planning body, that you're all representing us. And it's important to me, and maybe to all of us, to know, really, that you know what the impact is on the community, that our voice is heard, and that you're representing our needs. And our needs may not be the same as like the needs of a developer. And I feel like, you know, we have not been, but the voices of the community have not been heard frequently enough or often enough in terms of like the value that needs to be placed on it. And I've been to a lot of these meetings in the past, and people have continually said ways in which they would like that particular piece of property to be used. And it's not, according to what this plan is, this is not anything that's ever been mentioned by anybody I've ever heard testifying at any community meeting regarding this piece of land or this project. So I just wanted to put that out as a generality and sort of specifically about what it means to be in community and who represents us, and how many of us need to be told what's going on.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. I'm just going to reiterate, and I think it's important that everybody understand what the zoning board actually has to do with this process. And I think Mrs. Chapin kind of touched on that a little bit. We have a limited scope of what we are actually reviewing here this evening. We are glad to hear the concerns about water, traffic, so on and so forth, but that is not within the purview of our board to address or concern, and we do not have the right to even make any of those determinations. These are things that are typically brought before the planning board. We are entirely different entities. So what the scope of what we're dealing here this evening is the determination that was made by the CEO and why he directly denied the building permits. I don't like to tell anybody during a public hearing that what they're saying does not have scope on what our decisions are, but we will be doing another public hearing again on this matter. We're keeping this open, and I would like to ask everybody just to revisit what the determination was. Look at it. These items are available for review on the website, and you should be able to get a scope of directly what our board has to make a decision on this evening. And certainly, perhaps Ms. Chapin could answer questions, you know, to gauge everybody. You seem to have a very good handle on why we're here and what we're deciding this evening.
So we are all in agreement with the decision that was made to deny the building permit. So
You're making, yes, very supportive commentary on the denial.
I want to talk about the email. Not everybody in our community, and we have an older population, and not everybody has email. No, not everybody has computers. Sometimes the agendas are not on the mail, are not on the website.
I understand your concern, ma'am, but our board does not handle the email. It does not handle
No, I'm talking about the agenda for the meetings. I have called because they haven't been posted. They're posted on the same day of the meeting of this. Sometimes they're posted just the same day. They are not. Sometimes they are not posted a week in advance because I check.
Certainly.
So
I've met with the same frustrations. I would say that this is commentary that should be brought to the town board's attention, workshop meetings, so to speak. They are the entity that.
I understand that, but not everybody has computers, so.
I understand. I actually.
Okay, so that's why a letter. I'm very good at social media,
issue, but not in our purview.
Okay,
so I understand your frustration, and we hear you. I would suggest you direct that to the appropriate party who can make that change.
Okay, I'm very good at social media. I send out when my neighbors are all here. They get enough emails and enough messages from me about all these meetings. I have spent hours sending out what's going on here. So I do that. for my community, because.
Thank you for bringing up the accessibility issue.
Yeah, and that's all I'm saying, because when you mention that email, not everybody has it. So that's why I said letters, sometimes people always get.
I just talked to Mr. Schultes. He is gonna post it as soon as we know the date that it'll be. And if the firehouse can handle it, we will post it right away. People will drive by it, see it. There's also people, not only that don't have email, there's also, I mean, we could go down the realm of everything, Cheryl. There's people that are blind. There's people that say they can't hear. I mean, then you get into all this, how do we get in touch with all of these different people? It can't be done. It's gotta be a group effort, like you say. We're a town and we're a coastal town. I mean, I saw your post on Facebook, like over a week ago probably, about this meeting. So you did know about it because you posted about it.
So we're going out of the scope of what we're here to be talking about during this public hearing at the moment. So at this point, as I said, we will be continuing. I can't stress enough to review the documentation that's before our board and put something in writing. If you don't want to be here late in the evening, because these are matters, I apologize for everybody keeping here late, but we have to go through our due process. And when it gets late, it gets late. So if you want to put something in writing, we will receive letters and they will be read into the record as well. If you choose not to be here, but when we have these bigger projects, we're going to be here late sometimes. With that said, I'm going to move that we have a continuance of this public hearing. Oh, I apologize. Len, you have a question? No? Okay.
The point was, we're getting way off the subject.
Yes.
The purpose of the meeting.
It happens. So I move that we have a continuance of this public hearing at the October 13th, 2022 meeting. God, what do we want to do? We did 8 on the last one?
Yeah, we did 8. Do we want to do these guys first and get them out? At 7:30?
We switch Arizona's.
Or just.
I don't see why. It's probably only fair, being that we did them vice versa.
We already told Arizona 8 and everybody left, so you want to do 7:30? And then if we go over, the people from Arizona.
Not everybody.
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do it.
7:30.
7:30.
7:30, October 13th.
Thank you.
Approximate.
And I did, now that we're out of public hearing mode, I did forget to, oh, yeah.
No, Alex said.
This is what happens to my brain.
Okay, Alex said, and we need to.
Yes, thank you.
And we need to finish the vote.
Okay, so, second was made by Alex, correct?
Yep.
All in favor, verbal aye or show of hands, all in favor, none opposed. And I forgot that on the Arizona, I wanted to have commentary from the planning board.
Oh, right, so,
So
you want.
should I remake a motion or something?
No, just, yeah, make a new one, another motion.
Okay. Okay. Yes, Maggie will take it.
Yes.
She's also their secretary.
No, because they will, they'll just say something. It'll be a bad.
Tune in next week.
I mean, yeah, they.
Let's talk about that because they.
Somebody do that? Didn't he do
Tell
that?
us what happened.
He got seconded and everything. We did it.
Anybody wants to put their email address in the
No, you can't do it.